So I was gonna go ahead and watch this film today, record tomorrow, but what the hell did I just watch? I just sat through my first comedy for the series, and I regret every decision that's led me up to this point. Wedding Crashers. Why did it have to be Wedding Crashers? I'm sitting here looking at my spreadsheet, and I'm like, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, why couldn't you have just gotten 3 million more? That way I could be covering Charlie and the Chocolate Factory instead of this crap. This dumpster fire. This what the fresh hell. Oh my god. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you let me down. Before I go into my rage fest, let's hit those box office stats and get a recap of this atrocious film. With a budget of $40 million, Wedding Crashers generated an overall domestic revenue of $209,255,921 at the box office. This was, unfortunately, somehow the highest grossing film released in the July of 2005, but it was still beat out in monthly earnings by War of the Worlds, which was released the previous month. Wedding Crashers only generated $115,621,541 its first month at the box office, while War of the Worlds came in first at $182,686,864. So, this movie is about a couple of good-for-nothing sleazeball best friends, Jeremy and John, who go around crashing weddings to enjoy free booze and hook up with women. In the middle of their final crash of the wedding season, John ends up getting a little too interested in bridesmaid Claire, and the duo's final wedding turns into a long weekend with Claire and her family, where absolute cringe and chaos ensues at the family estate. Now, on to the scathing opinions.
I'm gonna go home, see Dr. Finkelstein, and I'm gonna tell him we got a whole new bag of issues. We can forget about Mom for a while.
So, from the beginning, it's pretty easy to see where this is gonna go, right? It looks like the two of them, Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, John and Jeremy, respectively, they look to be mediators in a divorce for a divorce attorney. I don't know. That's beside the point. They're sitting there riffing off one another. They're kind of being cheesy, corny, sleazeballs a little bit. I'm like, okay, if this is the worst that I have to sit through, it's the worst that I have to sit through. It's not. It goes right off the deep end, right off the bat. The closing statement to the opening scene, right? To introduce John and Jeremy is, can you two just not talk anymore? And I was like, yeah, I feel like that is going to be the vast majority of this film for me. And they were right. I did appreciate the mini tirade that Jeremy goes on in the beginning after his secretary comes in and she's like, oh, I know who to set you up with on a blind date. And he launches into the spiel how modern dating sucks and it's so awkward and nobody wants to be there, and you're like, are you into it? Are you not into them? Blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, it just sucks for everyone, and all the two parties really care about, if it is a blind date, it is just whether or not they can skip to the canoodling at the end. And I'm like, God, that really does sound like modern dating. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that spiel was kind of funny. That's kind of where my appreciation, I guess, any appreciation, I'm calling it appreciation because I had virtually none for this film, ended. Like, I just kind of thought it was funny. I'm so glad that I'm not in the modern dating scene because holy hell. And of course, we launch into a montage of them crashing weddings, right? And at first it was kind of funny. It was kind of silly to see how they were mingling and integrating themselves so well with the wedding parties. And I just, at the beginning of the montage, thought, who the hell goes to weddings for fun? Because as someone who's heard all of these wedding horror stories, it just didn't make any sense. And then, of course, it started getting into the picking up girls part of the montage. And I'm like, okay, that is actually kind of smart, I guess, because following the same line of thought with the wedding horror stories, you do hear about how, yeah, you either go for the food, which either sucks or is really good at weddings, or you go to see if you can hook up with one of the bridesmaids or the groomsmen, right? That's kind of the bit, that's kind of the stereotype. So it went from who the hell goes to weddings for fun to, okay, yeah, that is kind of smart, I guess, in a really extremely sleazy perspective. And the montage was too hecking long. I'm like, okay, you could have had half of that scene and we would have gotten the point, right? We really would have gotten it. And even at the end, John, they're sitting there with a bottle of wine the morning after one of their weddings from the montage. And John looks at Jeremy and he's like, quote, "Don't you think we're being a little, I don't want to say sleazy because that's not the right word." And I'm like, yes, it is. You're being extremely sleazy. They're like, for the wedding season, I guess the summer, I don't know. For the wedding season, we have 17 weddings lined up. I'm like, okay, and this is just a norm for you guys, like going in, and it's not like the picking up the girls thing entirely 100%. The fact that they went so far as to have these crazy ass cover stories, like different personalities, I don't know, these different characters, right, for these different weddings is just, it was insane after a certain point. They're talking about how like Owen Wilson's kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore, really. It just kind of feels like I'm ready to back out. Or the scene felt like he was just ready to kind of stop doing that, you know? And Vince Vaughn's character is like, you know, there's no room for error. We've got this well planned, blah, blah, blah. And at one point they pull out a freaking file on the records of the entire family for a secretary's like daughter, a secretary's relative's wedding, whatever. I'm like, holy shit, this is, you would think that we were getting ready to storm the White House or some shit, because it's all based in DC, but you would think that we were getting ready to like storm the White House and like take all this shit down, but no, it's just, can we get girls? How fast can we get girls? I'm like, ugh, seriously? It was just trashy and gross, and oh my god, no. I will say that them betting on what was going to happen during the secretary's family's wedding was kind of funny. Like, oh, is she $20? She's a crier. Another $20 that they're gonna read this Bible verse. I did think that was kind of funny. Like they'd been to enough to bet to wager with one another, but I don't know. It was just gross. I was grossed out the entire freaking time. The entire beginning, and then parts at the end where John, Owen Wilson's character, decides to go it alone. It just, I didn't cringe as much as I thought I was going to in this film, but there was still enough cringing to make it extremely uncomfortable. So we had the two main characters, John Beckwith and Jeremy Gray. Ooh, I did not like Jeremy. I did not like Jeremy at all. He was an entire freaking embarrassment the entire film. He was just that unapologetically huge asshole character that would just shove food in his mouth and exaggeratedly talk with his mouth open, and just was the extra gross one out of the two, I guess. I didn't feel bad when shit eventually kept happening to him, because he was kind of the instigator. John felt like a follower most of the time, but Jeremy was like the instigator. He was the guy that went and was like, I have the 17 weddings that we're doing this season. Yeah, he keeps saying things out loud, too loud for all to hear, that were clearly not okay, that, you know, when everyone hushed and kind of looked at them like, did he really just hecking say that? Should have maybe clued in, both of them, that what we're doing isn't 1000% okay in the slightest, but they would just lower voices and continue on. So yeah, I just didn't feel bad whenever he just kind of kept getting trucked over by the asshole fiance boyfriend later on in the film, or he just kept getting served his just desserts. He only used, there's a whole set of rules apparently that they have to abide by, the wedding crashing rules. There was like over 115, because they would keep throwing out like rule number 6, blah blah blah, rule 115. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how many rules are there? He the rules were apparently created by a Chaz Reinhold, which I was like, who the hell is Chaz Reinhold? Because apparently he was in the Hall of Fame or whatnot, and I was literally going to look up who the hell Chaz Reinhold was at the end of the film, because I'm like, okay, if he's in the Hall of Fame, then he's got to be someone. But then later on, it is Will Ferrell descending the stairs. I'm like, okay, cool. It's just Jeremy being an asshole. There is no Hall of Fame for this guy. He's the master sleazeball, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, for about 5 minutes, I was like, okay, I need to remember. I actually wrote it down. I need to remember to go see who Chaz Reinhold is. It's just Will Ferrell. Great. Wonderful. John's character, again, he was more of like the follower, and I wasn't as grossed out by John as I was Jeremy, because John still had like a little bit of class. He was smooth and could be charming when he wanted to be. So whenever it's him and Claire, his love interest, played by Rachel McAdams, when it's him genuinely trying to woo her, I was like, all right, why don't you do this? Why don't you actually go pursue an actual relationship? Because you do have what it takes to be a genuinely charming guy, but no, he's still a freaking idiot. He was trying to play a short game with someone who was in a long-term relationship. Claire was already in a relationship with a guy named Sack, played by Bradley Cooper, there were a couple of names that I didn't know were in this film until I shoved the disc in and they appeared on screen. But she had been in a relationship with Bradley Cooper for, they said, 3 years. And I'm like, my guy, you cannot play the short game with someone who's already been in a long-term relationship. Relationship, period, right? You don't pursue that, you don't touch that. Now, I could see the whole, hey man, maybe you should get out of this relationship because it turns out that Sack is actually an asshole and he treats Claire like shit. So I could be like a friend, not just trying to get in Claire's pants kind of thing, not like John's perspective, but a friend. She could definitely benefit from a friend telling her, hey, maybe this guy isn't the best for you. But Sack did an excellent job of playing the good old boy kind of thing, like, everyone likes me, I'm a great guy, ha ha ha, until it's behind closed doors. Or at the very end when shit hits the fan, naturally. But yeah, I didn't have too much of a problem with Owen Wilson until he goes off the rails. Like, eventually they get caught, and when they do get caught, Jeremy, they aren't faced with too many repercussions. Basically, the secretary, the father to Claire and Gloria, the two love interests, he's like, there's a ferry in 10 minutes, get on the ferry and leave. Like, he doesn't go to press charges, he's just like, leave. We know the truth, get the hell out of here. I thought that was pretty good. That is like the best case scenario for you being outed to the entire family. Like, it could have been very bad because these are very important people that you're dealing with, and they're just like, nah, we don't want anything. So Jeremy, he's like, okay, cool, whatever, still gets to see his love interest, Gloria. More on that in a second, because Jesus, Gloria. And John ends up getting really sad because Claire, like any rational person, would be like, screw you, man, you've been lying to me this entire weekend. I don't want anything to do with you. Like, that's it, you lied, I don't know what's true and what's not, you made me catch feelies. Bye. So he goes off the deep end and starts crashing weddings solo because Jeremy still keeps in touch with his fling, Gloria, which turns into something more. Technically, John did fall in love with Claire. I guess right off the bat, you get the extra sparkly, shiny scene. At the beginning in the montage, they're going through chicks like left and right, like, that one's mine, dibs, go for it, go bro. And then whenever Rachel McAdams, Claire, walks on the screen, there's kind of the sparkly, oh, this one's different, it's gonna be this different this time. And Owen Wilson, John, ends up pursuing this one with a little bit more interest, like genuine interest. So you kind of know that he's been in love with her, or he's falling in love with her, and it doesn't sit well with him. So because Jeremy ends up still being able to keep in contact with Gloria, his love, John ends up going solo and meeting up with the Chaz character that I mentioned earlier, who was just I'm not gonna lie. When I saw Will Ferrell walk down the stairs and I was like, no, no, this is Chaz. This is Chaz. Oh my God, this is Chaz. I've been had. I really did almost turn off the TV. I was like, cool. There's nothing against Will Ferrell, but there's like 2 films that I've seen him in that I genuinely think like, oh, I love this film. This one, had I known that Will Ferrell was in this film, even for the short period of time that he was, that probably would have helped me be even more mentally prepared. But when I saw him, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like I paused and sat there for a second and was like, okay, this has already been a level of unhinged. This is going to go, ooh, even further down that path. We were kind of just trucking along. We're about to snowball down to the deep end. He was ridiculous. He plays this like 40-year-old loser that's still living with his mom and is screaming like, go make us meatloaf. We have a guest. Go make us meatloaf. And he's, again, the guy that taught them the rules to wedding crashing or whatever the frick frack snick snack those were. So whenever John goes to meet Chaz, he's like, oh yeah, no, weddings are cool, but like, have you tried funerals? Funerals where it's at, man. And so of course they go crash a funeral, which is even more painful because it's Will Ferrell doing Will Ferrell to the nth degree. And John naturally has his turning point where he's like, nah, man, this isn't cool. I realize what I'm doing. Let's go get my girl, whatever. And I liked his girl. I liked Claire. I thought she deserved better. Far better, because she seemed like a smart girl out of the entire family, out of the entire Cleary family. There's the secretary Cleary, it's Christopher Walken, which honestly, this is probably one of the most chill roles and like well done roles for me that I've seen Christopher Walken in. I know, that's a take. There's his wife, Claire, and Gloria, the 2 sisters. There's the brother, Todd. Oh, it's just, yeah. And then the grandma. The grandma is unhinged. She looks like the sweet old lady, but she's like throwing around curses and all that stuff, and it's just like constantly heckling Todd. Todd originally was just like, I originally thought of him as this awkward artist who was the butt of several jokes, but he's more than the butt of several jokes. He and Gloria are insane, like verifiably insane. The mom, Kathleen, was just there to be boobs, literally. And then there's Claire, who seems to have a really good head on her shoulders. The secretary, he was kind of, He had his daughter's best interests at heart, but like whenever it came to Gloria, it just went completely and totally over his head. But he always seems to be able to have like a normal conversation with Claire. I don't know. It seems, depending on who he was talking to, kind of determines what mindset he was going to be in, which I guess that kind of makes sense. There are those people that just pick up on the vibes of those around them and kind of adapt. That seemed to be him to the extreme. Claire, again, like I said, she seemed to be really, really smart. Like, bro, she was so real for laughing whenever she's at, she's one of the bridesmaids earlier, and they just kept making these nautical puns during their vows, and she just kept laughing. And like, I really do feel like that. I feel like you're gonna be the normal one in this movie, which she was. Her written speech hurt so badly. That was my first major case of pure cringe. The montage, the sleazeball montage at the beginning was cringe, but also equal parts ick. She was not a complete and total idiot in her family. And it seems to me like she kind of started to see through. It seemed like she was able to start seeing through John's lies, because there's a part where he tells Secretary Cleary, someone who he very much looks up to, and why they went to that wedding in the first place. Since the wedding season was over, if you will, this was supposed to be the extra additional one, that he knows how to sail. And when she sees him having difficulty on the boat, you can kind of see her start to maybe think he's not entirely telling the truth. Maybe something's off here. But it made me sad when she kind of just clearly brushed it off and yeah, didn't think much of it. And I guess it makes sense because they spent a long weekend together, really. It was just a long weekend. So how do you know if this person you've just met is actually lying or is telling the truth? You don't know because you've just met them. Her fiance, Sack, just kind of, he was very controlling and very manipulative, and manipulative in the sense that he's trying to worm his way into the Cleary family, right? But he's very controlling with her, and I really hated how whenever he told the family, without asking her first, that they were getting married, she just kind of went with it. She didn't object. She just kind of went outside and was like, I need time. But she didn't object, and she just kept going with it. And then, of course, when we have the sad montage where John is going and outright destroying weddings, just getting so shit-faced and plastered that he's not even picking up chicks, he's just destroying weddings at this point. The other side to that is literally Claire just going through these wedding preparations, and people are like, oh, so we're gonna have this and we're gonna do that, and the Sack is like, yeah, that's great, and she's just kind of nodding like, yeah, okay, but you could see she's not happy. Yeah, it just kind of frustrated me because she did seem to be like a little more headstrong, even though she has naturally her own insecurities, right? She's still okay with figuring out her own path until someone like Sack tells her, like, you know, get your shit together, or makes her feel bad about herself. But yeah, at the very end, whenever she tells Sack, I'm not marrying you, and John is like, yay, she's not marrying him, I have a chance. I wish she had turned and been like, and I'm not messing with you either because you heckin' lied to me the entire time that I knew you. But of course, you know, rom-com, they're gonna get together. Honestly, I would have watched a rom-com between John and Claire instead of this train wreck. I didn't mind the two of them together. I don't particularly like rom-coms. I don't think I can name a single one off the top of my head without really thinking about it that I really enjoy. I would have watched these two together and probably would have been okay with it. I thought Owen Wilson and Rachel McAdams had some pretty good chemistry. It was organic. It wasn't anything like, you know, crazy sparks flying, but it was organic enough for me to believe it and just be like, oh, I would be really happy if you were being honest with her right now, and it was just someone from just kind of the normal class dealing with someone in the well-to-do political environment, just trying to figure it out. I would have been okay with that, and thought so a couple of times throughout this film whenever it was just the two of them kind of hanging out. I would have even kept Sack in there as the big bad, if you will. He was goofy. He just acted like this high school thug, like this high school jock, this high school thug. Like literally him and his cronies would go around tee-hee and, you know, ha-haing and just kind of being little villains. And they'd be like, you are the Sack. Of course that chick's gonna want to hook up with you, because naturally he would be cheating on Claire off to the side to make him an asshole, to make you not feel too bad that they're Claire and John are developing feelies for one another. But yeah, he was silly, extra silly, and it works because, again, this is a comedy. But earlier I'd said that I didn't feel too bad about Jeremy's character just kind of reaping what he sowed. It was extremely satisfying whenever Sack kept laying out Jeremy whenever they're playing touch football. Like, it was just extremely satisfying because he really is an asshole. He really is a douchebag, both of them. But it was just really cathartic, really therapeutic. And of course he would be like, oh, sorry, I have, like, you know, major competitive issues. I'm seeing a Buddhist about it. What? You know what? I'm just gonna carry on my wayward son and not think too much about it. And then we go, you know, even crazier to Gloria, Todd, and Kathleen. I guess we're gonna start with Kathleen because Kathleen is the easiest, the shortest one to address. Kathleen, right off the bat, is hitting on John, Owen Wilson's character, and I thought it was kind of funny and kind of like, I thought it would just be this like D plot, you know, just very much off to the side, that nothing would ever come of it. It would just be like, you know, the cougar mom is into the younger guy, and I was okay chuckling over that. It was actually kind of funny until we got the unnecessary boob feeling scene, and then she literally did not show up again on screen after the fact. She would be there in the side, the peripheral of the screen, but she literally had no more lines. She walks in to John's room and she's like, touch my booba, and then you can leave. And that is literally what happens. It's like, really? What? Why? I would have thought it would be more funny to have that, again, cougar hitting on John thing than to have the boob feely scene, but I guess we needed some like titties in there to make it more entertaining. I don't know. It just kind of felt unnecessary, and I just thought it was I thought it was extremely funny in a not good way that she literally did not have any more lines after that, because she kept popping up regularly until after the booba scene, and it was like, all right, cool. Except that it's not. Gloria hurt me so. Gloria was psycho. Like, she is insane. And of course, Jeremy, Vince Vaughn's character, does end up with Gloria at the end. Because why wouldn't they? Everyone has to end up with someone, right? But she's insane. She's supposed to be like a huge comedic force, but it was cringe. It was so cringe, and she was just psycho, dude. She was so psycho. Like, she was like literally messing with him, censoring this for YouTube, messing with him at the dinner table, like, oh, it's no big deal, proceeds to tie him to the bed and just duct taping socks into his mouth, and then leaves him there where Todd finds him. Again, more on that in a second, but she just, I don't know. You didn't know what she was gonna do. She was just like a ticking time bomb. You look at her the wrong way, and she's like, I don't know, in one moment she's like literally throwing herself on top of him, and then he gets injured at one point, and she gets pissed off because he's trying to be like, okay, I just need a second to breathe and not have your hand literally down my pants. And she ends up like smacking his injury. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, hold on, hang on, whatever. No, let's not do that. But naturally, Jeremy's into that. He's like, I know she's crazy, I know she's psycho, and yet it turns me on. I'm like, good for you. You guys let that freak flag fly off the screen. I don't want to see that anymore. The two of you, I don't like Jeremy. Gloria, I see her and I just start to shrink into the couch. I don't want to see you guys together, because that always sucks too. And of course, she's also used as a learning tool for Jeremy, because she lies about him being her first time, and she's like, oh, I just thought that that's what guys wanted to hear. And he's like, oh, how dare she lie to me? But then he's like, I don't care, I still love her, blah, blah, blah. And when the truth comes out about them being wedding crashers, about how they literally use weddings to get with chicks, she's still like, I love you. And he's like, I want you. So the two of them are still like a match made in hell. It is what it is. I just kind of had to be prepared to rake out my eyeballs whenever they were on the screen together. Todd, again, I just thought he was supposed to be the butt of several jokes in the beginning. And he's the extremely awkward artist. But then in the scene where Gloria leaves Jeremy tied down to the bed, he also sneaks into that room and is like, I saw you making eyes at me. I'm gonna try and push a non-con thing, which doesn't happen, but it was just kind of like, ooh, this is really uncomfy. Let's not. All of it was uncomfy, don't get me wrong, but the fact that like Gloria and Todd were like, yeah, there was nothing consensual about what they were doing to Jeremy in that scene. At least it was kind of like, at least in the beginning, it was just people partying and hooking up and, separating. But this was like, literally mans had no choice, and they were not taking no for an answer. So I extra didn't feel good about that scene at all. And then of course you have, to make sure that nothing goes too far with Todd and Jeremy, you have the dad walk in, Secretary Cleary, and he's like, I thought I heard something, you good? And of course, Jeremy's sitting there like literally tied to the 4-post bed, and he's like, nah, I'm good. And then the secretary proceeds to just sit on the edge of the bed and have this conversation and like literally put his hands on one of the ropes like, yeah, whatever. No, I'm like, are you that oblivious to, no? Okay, cool. This film was just all over the place. It was all over the place. Can't say I would recommend this. Again, I'm not a huge fan of modern comedies. Sometimes there will be one that will hit, but more times than not, no, I don't like them. So it just I didn't really have the best time watching it. I will say I am eternally grateful that we didn't have to get puke on the screen. It's just him doubled over a toilet bowl. I personally do not like toilet humor. I was really afraid that we were going to have extreme toilet humor because it seems like it's virtually impossible nowadays to have a comedy without one of those sequences, and I don't feel like you need it, but this was done well enough to where I was like, okay, this is manageable, this is tolerable. Thank you for not having that on screen. But which goes to show you just how damn bad it was for me to be like, oh yay, that wasn't there. Thank God it wasn't entirely bad. It was no. It was no. I don't think I will watch this movie again. Ever. If someone's like, hey, I see you have Wedding Crashers on your shelf. Yeah, you can watch that. You want to take it with you? You can have that. Take it with you. Get it out of my house. Did not have a good time. This was just not my cup of tea. This movie was not for me. I'd love to hear the perspective of someone that did enjoy this film. I'd love to hear like all of the good things about it, because all I really got to see were the super hyper cringe and sleazy parts. That's really all I could focus on. So let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time in 2015.